I stood in the center of my living room on my 65th birthday, my left eye swollen completely shut. The purple bruise spreading across my cheekbone made every woman in the room gasp. 30 guests holding cake plates fell silent, forks frozen in midair. My son Brandon broke the silence with words that still echo in my nightmares. My wife put her in her place so she'd finally shut up. His wife Jessica smirked from beside him, arms crossed over her chest like a victor. My brother Thomas set down his drink with careful deliberation. He walked toward Brandon with measured steps. The room held its breath. Thomas didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The steel in his quiet words cut through the shocked silence like a blade. "Brandon, do you see what you just said? Do you hear yourself?" My son's face flushed red, but not with shame, with defiance. "She deserved it, Uncle Thomas. Mom's been interfering in our marriage for months. Someone had to shut her up." I tried to speak, tried to defend myself, but my voice came out as nothing more than a broken whisper. My jaw ached, my head throbbed. The humiliation of standing there, battered and dismissed by my own child, made my knees weak. Thomas addressed the room, his retired judge's voice carrying authority even in casual clothes at a birthday party. "Everyone here just witnessed a man defend his wife for assaulting his mother on her birthday. I want you all to remember this moment." Murmurs rippled through my guests. My sister Diane looked away, uncomfortable. My cousin Ruth stared at her shoes, but my friend Helen stepped forward, her hand finding mine. Jessica jumped in before anyone else could speak, her voice pitched high with false emotion. "Miranda's been trying to break up our marriage. She told Brandon I'm a gold digger. She's been poisoning him against me since the day we met." "That's not true," I managed to say, but my voice cracked. "I just asked if you were contributing to the household expenses. You've been living in Brandon's house for 3 years without paying rent or utilities. See?" Jessica pointed at me triumphantly. "She can't help herself. She's controlling and manipulative." Thomas held up his hand. "I'm a retired family court judge. What happened here tonight is domestic violence and elder abuse. Brandon, by defending it, you're complicit. This is a crime." The word hung in the air. Crime. Some family members shifted uncomfortably. My nephew Daniel pulled out his phone, and I realized with horror that people might be recording this. My humiliation would be permanent, shareable, forever. Brandon's face darkened further. "A crime? My mother's been trying to control my life since I was born." "Well, not anymore." He turned to Jessica, and something passed between them. Some silent communication that made my stomach drop. Jessica whispered something in his ear. Brandon's expression hardened into something I didn't recognize. This wasn't my son. This was a stranger wearing my child's face. "Jessica and I are leaving," Brandon announced loudly. "And we're taking the kids. Mom, you'll never see Emma and Lucas again. Ever." My heart stopped. My grandchildren. Emma was 8 years old, Lucas only 6. They were in the backyard with the other children, blissfully unaware that their world was about to shatter. "Brandon, no," I pleaded. "Please, don't do this." He ignored me completely. He walked to the sliding glass door and called out, "Emma, Lucas, we're leaving, now." The children came running inside, their faces flushed from playing. Emma took one look at my bruised face and her eyes went wide. "Grandma, what happened to you?" "Nothing, sweetheart," I tried to say, but Jessica cut me off. "Your grandmother fell. She's clumsy. Come on, we need to go." "But we didn't have cake yet," Lucas protested, his lower lip trembling. Brandon grabbed their hands, his grip tight enough to make Lucas wince. I said no. Jessica followed, pausing at the door to look back at me with a smile that chilled my blood. It wasn't just satisfaction. It was promise. This wasn't over. This was just beginning. The door slammed behind them. I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking with sobs I couldn't control. Helen sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. Thomas knelt in front of me, his face creased with concern. "Miranda, we need to take you to the hospital. That eye needs to be looked at." "No," I said. "I can't. If I report this, If there's a police report, it'll make everything worse. Brandon will never forgive me. I'll lose him forever. You need to document this, Thomas insisted. Even if you don't press charges now, you need medical records. My sister-in-law, Carol, Thomas's wife, examined my face with gentle fingers. She'd been a nurse for 30 years before retiring. He's right, Miranda. This is serious. The swelling, the bruising. You could have orbital bone damage. The party dissolved around us. Guests left quietly, their birthday wishes hollow and awkward. Diane hugged me briefly but said nothing about what she'd witnessed. Ruth promised to call but avoided my eyes. Only Helen, Thomas, and Carol remained. 3 hours later, we returned from the emergency room. The doctor had been kind but firm. My orbital bone wasn't fractured, thank God, but the soft tissue damage was severe. She'd asked how it happened. I'd said I fell. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth, but what else could I say? That my daughter-in-law had punched me? That my son had defended it? We pulled into my driveway, and immediately I knew something was wrong. The front door stood slightly ajar. I always locked it. Always. Thomas went in first, his hand on his phone ready to call 911. But there was no intruder, just absence. The kind of absence that screams theft. My family photo albums were gone. The ones with pictures of Brandon as a baby, as a toddler, growing up. 40 years of memories vanished. My jewelry box sat empty on my dresser. My mother's wedding ring, the one I'd promised to give Emma someday, stolen. Legal documents from my file cabinet, scattered on the floor, clearly rifled through. And on my kitchen counter, written in Jessica's distinctive loopy handwriting, a note on my own stationery. You wanted to destroy my family. Now watch yours fall apart. I sank into a kitchen chair, the full weight of what was happening finally crushing me. This wasn't just a birthday ruined. This wasn't just a family argument that would blow over. This was war. And Jessica had just fired the opening shot. Thomas picked up the note with a napkin, careful not to smudge any fingerprints. We're documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, everything. She just escalated this from assault to burglary. But I barely heard him. All I could think about was Emma's face when she saw my bruised eye. Lucas's confusion when his father dragged him away. My grandchildren were pawns in a game I didn't even know I was playing. And somehow, I knew this was only the beginning. The next 3 days passed in a blur of phone calls that went unanswered. I called Brandon's cell phone 27 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. I left messages, my voice breaking, begging him to just talk to me, to let me explain, to let me see the children. Nothing. On the 4th day, I drove to their house. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I knew Brandon would be at work, but Jessica would be home. She didn't work. She'd quit her job at the insurance agency 2 years ago, claiming stress, and Brandon had supported her ever since. I parked across the street, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The house looked peaceful. Jessica's car sat in the driveway. Inside were my grandchildren, probably doing homework or watching television. So close, yet completely unreachable. I got out of the car. I made it halfway up the driveway when the front door flew open. Jessica stood there, phone already in her hand. Get off my property, she said, her voice cold. I just want to talk, I said. Please, Jessica. I just want to understand what happened. Why are you doing this? You know exactly what you did. You've been undermining me since day one. Well, I'm done playing nice. If you take one more step, I'm calling the police. Please, I just want to see Emma and Lucas, just for a few minutes. Jessica smiled. Actually smiled. Then she dialed. Yes, police? There's a woman on my property who's harassing and threatening me. She assaulted me last week, and now she's back. I'm terrified. Please send someone. What? No, that's not what happened, I shouted, but Jessica had already given them the address. I left before the police arrived, my heart pounding. How had this happened? How had I become the villain in this story? Helen came over that evening and found me sitting in the dark, still wearing the same clothes from my failed attempt to see the children. "You need a lawyer," she said gently. "This isn't going to resolve itself." She was right. The next morning, I called Lawrence Patterson, an attorney who'd handled my will years ago. His office was in downtown Austin, in one of those old renovated buildings on 6th Street. He listened to my story with the patient expression of someone who'd heard worse, which somehow made me feel both better and more pathetic. "Grandparents' rights in Texas are complicated," he explained. "But, given the circumstances, you have grounds to petition for visitation. We'll also pursue the return of your stolen property." His retainer was $3,000. My savings account, already depleted from years of retirement on a librarian's pension, took a serious hit. But what choice did I have? 1 week after my birthday, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. He handed me legal papers with an apologetic expression. Jessica had filed for a restraining order against me. I read the documents with shaking hands. Jessica claimed I'd been verbally abusive for years, that I'd threatened to harm her if she didn't leave Brandon, that I'd shown up at their house multiple times, harassing and threatening her. She included witness statements from Brandon and from her own mother, Linda, who hadn't even been at my birthday party. The restraining order was temporary, pending a hearing, but it included a provision that stopped my heart. No contact with Brandon, Jessica, or the grandchildren. "This can't be legal," I said to Lawrence when I called him. "She's lying. All of it is lies." "We'll fight it at the hearing," he assured me. "Bring any evidence you have. Text messages, emails, witnesses who can testify to your character." The hearing was set for 2 weeks away, the longest 2 weeks of my life. Thomas helped me prepare. We compiled text messages showing I'd never threatened Jessica. Character references from friends, from former colleagues at the library, from my pastor. Photos of me with Emma and Lucas, showing a loving grandmother, not an abusive presence. The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray, appropriate for how I felt inside. The courthouse in downtown Austin was imposing, all granite and glass. I'd been here before for jury duty, but never as a defendant, because that's what I was now. Defending myself against accusations that felt like daggers. Jessica arrived with an expensive lawyer named Marcus Webb. His suit probably cost more than my car. She wore a conservative dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked like a victim. She looked nothing like the woman who'd smirked, while my son announced she'd put me in my place. Judge Marianne Foster presided. She was in her 50s, stern-faced, with reading glasses that she peered over as she reviewed the documents. Marcus Webb presented Jessica's case first. He painted a picture of a woman terrorized by her controlling mother-in-law. He showed text messages, but they were stripped of context. A message where I'd asked, "Are you contributing anything to the household?" became harassment about finances. A message where I'd said, "Brandon seems stressed lately. Is everything okay?" became interfering in their marriage. Then Jessica testified. And she was good. Tears at exactly the right moments. A trembling voice when she described feeling unsafe. She claimed I'd cornered her at the grocery store and told her she'd never be good enough for my son. She claimed I'd called her at 2 a.m. to scream at her. She claimed I'd followed her to her gym. All lies. Complete fabrications. But she told them with such conviction that even I almost doubted my own memory. Brandon testified next. My son, my only child, sat in that witness box and told the judge that I'd been controlling and manipulative his entire life, that Jessica was right to be afraid, that he supported the restraining order fully. I watched him speak and didn't recognize him. Where was the little boy who'd brought me dandelions and called them flowers? Where was the teenager who'd cried in my arms when his father died? Where was the young man who'd called me his best friend? Gone. Replaced by this hollow-eyed stranger who couldn't even look at me as he destroyed me. Lawrence Patterson did his best. He presented our evidence. He called Helen as a witness. She testified that I'd never said anything threatening about Jessica, that I'd only ever wanted the best for Brandon. Thomas testified about what he'd witnessed at the birthday party, about Jessica's assault. But Judge Foster seemed skeptical. In cases like this, she explained, the court erred on the side of caution. Given the conflicting testimonies, given the documented attempts I'd made to contact Jessica after being asked not to, she was granting the temporary restraining order for 6 months. 6 months without seeing Emma and Lucas. 6 months of no contact with my son. I sat there as the judge spoke, and something inside me broke. Not dramatically, just a quiet crack, like ice forming on a winter pond. Outside the courthouse, Lawrence tried to be encouraging. "We can appeal. We can gather more evidence. This isn't over." But it felt over. It felt like I'd already lost everything that mattered. I drove home in a daze, pulled into my driveway, checked my mailbox out of habit. Inside was an official-looking envelope from my mortgage company. I opened it standing there on my front lawn, and the ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Eviction notice. Demand for immediate sale of property to satisfy debt obligations. I read it 3 times before it made sense. Then I remembered. 10 years ago, when I'd refinanced to pay for a new roof and plumbing repairs, Brandon had co-signed. At the time, it had seemed like a loving gesture. My son helping his widowed mother. His credit was better than mine. It had made the process easier. Now that co-signer status gave him legal right to force a sale. I had 60 days to vacate my home. The house where I'd raised Brandon. The house where my husband and I had spent 25 years together. The house where Emma and Lucas had taken their first steps, where we'd had Christmas mornings and Easter egg hunts. 60 days. I called Lawrence, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. He requested the documents, reviewed them, and confirmed what I already knew. Legally, Brandon had the right to do this. And if I fought it, it would cost more in legal fees than I could afford. That evening, Helen came over and found me sitting on the floor of my bedroom, surrounded by boxes I'd started packing, crying too hard to continue. "I don't understand how this happened," I sobbed. "How did my life fall apart so completely?" Helen held me, this woman who'd been my friend for 35 years, and I felt her tears on my shoulder too. "We're going to figure this out," she promised. But I could hear the doubt in her voice. The next day, she called me with something that made everything worse. "Miranda, I need to tell you something. I heard it at the grocery store. Jessica's been talking. She's telling people you're mentally unstable, that you're dangerous, that the family had to get a restraining order because you threatened to hurt the children." My stomach dropped. "What?" Carol Simmons barely spoke to me. You know Carol. She's always friendly. She actually crossed to the other side of the aisle to avoid me. And when I went to pay, the cashier looked at me with pity. "Everyone knows, Miranda. Jessica's destroying your reputation." I thought of my small town, population 8,000. Everyone knew everyone. Gossip spread like wildfire. And now I was the crazy grandmother who'd threatened her own grandchildren. I couldn't go to church that Sunday. Couldn't face the stares, the whispers. My pastor called to check on me, kind but clearly uncomfortable. "Miranda, if these allegations are true, we need to discuss your volunteer position with the children's Sunday school." "They're not true," I said. "None of it's true." "Then we'll pray the truth comes out," he said. But he didn't invite me back to volunteer. I was being erased. From my home, from my family, from my community. Jessica wasn't just taking my grandchildren. She was taking everything. 1 month later, I'd moved into a small apartment on the east side of town. Thomas and Carol had helped me pack, had paid my first and last month's rent when my savings fell short. The apartment was tiny, just a bedroom, bathroom, and combination living room and kitchen. My furniture from the house didn't fit. Most of it went into storage, another monthly expense I could barely afford. I hadn't seen Emma or Lucas in 5 weeks. 5 weeks of wondering if they missed me. 5 weeks of wondering what Jessica was telling them about why Grandma disappeared. My blood pressure medication had been increased twice. My doctor, concerned about my stress levels and weight loss, suggested therapy. But therapy cost money I didn't have. Every dollar went to legal fees, to rent, to basic survival. I'd applied for part-time jobs, but who wanted to hire a 65-year-old woman? Especially one with a reputation for being unstable. Then my sister Diane called. Miranda, I want to help. I know things have been difficult between you and Brandon. Maybe I can mediate. Help you two talk things through. Hope, dangerous and desperate, flared in my chest. You do that? You're my sister. Of course. Let's meet somewhere neutral. How about the coffee shop on Main Street? Tomorrow at 2? I agreed immediately. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain, how I'd apologize for whatever Brandon thought I'd done wrong, if it meant seeing my grandchildren again. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, my hands damp with nervous sweat. Diane was already there, sitting at a corner table, and next to her, Jessica. I stopped in the doorway. What is she doing here? Please, Miranda, just sit down. Hear us out. Every instinct told me to leave. But the thought of Emma and Lucas kept me rooted. I sat, as far from Jessica as the small table allowed. Jessica spoke first, her voice gentle, so different from the cold fury I'd seen at my house. Miranda, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. Maybe we overreacted. Maybe things got out of hand. I stared at her, searching for the trick. Out of hand? You punched me. You filed a restraining order. You're taking my house. I know. She looked down at her coffee cup. I was angry. You said some hurtful things, and I lashed out. It was wrong. I'm sorry. The apology sounded hollow, practiced. But she pulled out her phone and showed me photos. Emma and Lucas at the park. Lucas had lost a tooth. Emma had cut her hair short. 2 milestones I'd missed. They miss you, Jessica said softly. Emma asks about you all the time. Lucas drew you a picture, but Brandon wouldn't let him mail it. My throat tightened. I want to see them. Please, if you're really sorry, let me see them. Maybe we can work something out. But there needs to be honesty between us. Acknowledgement of what went wrong on both sides. She leaned forward. Can you admit you were interfering? That you made things harder for us? I knew what she wanted. She wanted me to confess. To say the words that would validate her narrative. But what choice did I have? If it meant seeing Emma and Lucas, I'd say anything. I'm sorry for interfering, I said, the words tasting like poison. I shouldn't have questioned how you and Brandon ran your household. I was out of line. Diane nodded encouragingly. That's good, Miranda. What else? I'm sorry for saying negative things about you, Jessica. I was wrong. Jessica's phone was on the table between us, screen dark. I didn't notice her tap it. Didn't realize she was recording every word. We talked for another 20 minutes. Jessica asked leading questions. I, desperate and foolish, answered them, admitting to things I'd never actually done, phrasing my words in ways that could be interpreted as confessions. So you did try to turn Brandon against me? I suppose my concerns could have been perceived that way. Yes, and you did show up at our house uninvited, even after being asked not to? I just wanted to see the children. But yes, I came to your house. Jessica even cried a little. Talked about how hard it had been, how scared she'd felt. I, stupidly, reached across the table to pat her hand. I never meant to scare you. I'm so sorry. The performance was flawless, and I'd walked right into it. 3 days later, someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it to find a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a weary expression. Miranda? I'm Sharon Coleman with Child Protective Services. We need to talk. My blood ran cold. CPS? Why? We received a report that you may pose a danger to your grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. May I come in? The next hour was humiliating beyond measure. Sharon asked invasive questions about my mental health, my living situation, my relationship with Brandon and Jessica. She inspected my tiny apartment, making notes. She asked if I was taking any medications, if I'd ever been treated for mental illness, if I'd ever had violent impulses. Someone reported that you threatened to kidnap the children, Sharon said, watching my face carefully. That you've been making threats against their mother, that you may have dementia, or some form of cognitive impairment. That's insane, I said. I've never threatened anyone. I just want to see my grandchildren. The report also says, you showed up at Emma's elementary school last week, trying to check her out of class. I've never been to her school. I don't even know which school she attends now. They changed schools this year. Sharon made more notes. I have to investigate every report, Miranda. It's my job. I'll need to speak with your doctor, with character witnesses, and I'll need you to undergo a psychological evaluation. This is Jessica, I said. She's behind this. She's making false reports. The report came from an anonymous source. Of course it did. Sharon provided me with paperwork for the psychological evaluation. It would cost $450, not covered by my insurance. Money I'd have to scrape together somehow. After she left, I called Thomas. They're coming after me with CPS now. They're saying I'm dangerous, that I have dementia. Miranda, listen to me. This is a pattern. Jessica is systematically building a case against you. We need to fight back harder. With what? I'm out of money, Thomas. I can barely afford groceries. I'll help. Carol and I will help. We're not letting her win. The psychological evaluation took place the following week with Dr. Raymond Foster, a clinical psychologist with an office in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. He was professional, thorough, and ultimately concluded that I showed no signs of mental illness, dementia, or violent tendencies. I felt vindicated until Sharon called me 2 days later. Miranda, we've received additional evidence. Journal entries allegedly written by you, expressing disturbing thoughts about Jessica, and emails sent from your account to Jessica containing threats. That's impossible. I never wrote any journal entries. I haven't kept a journal in years, and I never sent threatening emails. The restraining order prohibits contact. Why would I violate it? I'm forwarding these to the authorities. They'll need to be analyzed. Thomas hired a forensic expert to examine the so-called evidence. It cost $5,000, money he insisted on lending me despite my protests. The expert, a woman named Dr. Patricia Lynn, specialized in document fraud and digital forensics. Her findings came back within a week. The journal entries were written in my handwriting, but they'd been traced. Someone had taken old shopping lists and notes of mine, then carefully traced over them to write new, incriminating content. The paper matched a notepad Jessica had access to from my house. The emails came from an account created to look like mine, but the IP address traced back to Jessica's workplace, a dental office where she'd briefly returned to work part-time. This is fraud, Dr. Lynn said. Clear-cut forgery. You have grounds to press charges. But pressing charges meant more legal fees, more court dates, more time away from Emma and Lucas. And the CPS investigation, even with this evidence, continued. Bureaucracy moved slowly. The restraining order was extended another 6 months. My church asked me to stop volunteering with children, citing liability concerns. I sat in my tiny apartment one night, staring at a bottle of blood pressure medication. 30 pills. Would that be enough? Would anyone even notice if I disappeared? I held the bottle for a long time. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Miranda? This is Kelly Martinez. We worked together at the library, remember? Kelly, young, bright, had worked in circulation while finishing her master's degree in information science. That had been 5 years ago. Kelly, of course. How are you? I'm good, but I'm calling about something strange. I don't know if I should even tell you this, but I heard about what's happening with you and your family, and I thought you should know. Jessica came to the library about 4 months ago, before your birthday party. She was using the research computers, looking up stuff about grandparents' rights, restraining orders, elder abuse claims. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after hearing what happened, it clicked. Miranda, she was planning this. She researched how to do exactly what she's done to you. I sat up straight, my pulse quickening. Are you sure? I helped her find some of the legal databases. She said it was for a friend, but I remember because she was taking screenshots of everything on her phone. She was there for like 3 hours. Kelly, would you be willing to testify to that? To put it in writing? There was a long pause. I could lose my job. The library takes patron privacy seriously. Please. This is my life. My grandchildren. Another pause. Then, okay, yes, I'll do it. That phone call was the first crack in Jessica's perfect facade. And it gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope, I learned, was a dangerous thing. It made you reckless. It made you dig deeper, push harder, risk more. Kelly's testimony about Jessica's premeditated research opened a door. If Jessica had planned this for months, there had to be more evidence, more people who'd seen her true nature. Thomas and I became investigators. We started with Jessica's past, the years before she met Brandon. Social media made it easier than it would have been 20 years ago. Jessica had cleaned up her online presence, but the internet never truly forgets. We found her ex-boyfriend's name in an old college newspaper article. Jason Burke, now living in San Diego, working as a software engineer. I found him on LinkedIn and sent a message. I'm Brandon's mother. I need to talk to you about Jessica. He called me that same night. I wondered if this day would come, Jason said. His voice was tired, resigned. What did she do to you? I told him everything. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. She did the same thing to me. 7 years ago, we dated for about a year. When I tried to break up with her, she accused me of assault, filed a police report, told everyone on campus I'd attacked her. I had to transfer schools, almost lost my scholarship. My parents spent $15,000 on a lawyer to keep me from being charged. Why didn't you fight back? I was 21 years old, terrified, and she was convincing. She had bruises. I didn't know then that you could give yourself bruises, that you could manufacture evidence. By the time I understood what she'd done, it was too late. I just wanted to forget it ever happened. Would you be willing to testify? To document what she did to you? I don't know. That was a long time ago. I've moved on. My grandchildren are 8 and 6. They're living with her. If she could do that to you, to me, what's she doing to them? That got him. Okay, I'll write down what happened. Send you a statement. But I can't promise more than that. It was something. Thomas continued digging and found Jessica's former employer, a marketing firm in Dallas, where she'd worked for 2 years. She'd left suddenly, and there'd been a lawsuit. The company had settled for $35,000. Thomas used his legal connections to contact the former HR director, a man named Gerald Chen, who'd since retired to Phoenix. He agreed to talk, off the record. Jessica was trouble from day one, Gerald said over the phone. But she was good at her job, so we overlooked the drama, until she accused her supervisor of sexual harassment. It was serious allegations. We investigated thoroughly, brought in an outside firm, found nothing. No evidence, no corroboration, and 3 witnesses who contradicted her timeline. But Jessica threatened a lawsuit, threatened to go to the media. It would have destroyed our reputation whether it was true or not. So we paid her to go away. She fabricated it? I can't prove that legally, but between you and me? Yes, absolutely. And when we told her we were calling her bluff, she changed tactics. Said she'd settle quietly if we paid her enough. That's not how real victims behave. Would you testify to that? Now? Sure. I'm retired. What's she going to do to me? Another piece of evidence. Another crack in the facade. But the real breakthrough came from Thomas, 3 days later. He called me at 7 in the morning, his voice sharp with urgency. Miranda, get dressed. We need to go to the county assessor's office. Why? Just trust me. An hour later, we sat in a small office reviewing property records. Thomas pointed to numbers on a screen. Your house. Current assessed value, $480,000. You owe approximately $240,000 on the mortgage, which means when it sells, there's approximately $240,000 in equity. Brandon, as co-signer with forced sale rights, gets half. That's $120,000. I know, I said bitterly. That's why they're doing this. But there's more. He pulled up another document. Your late husband's life insurance policy. You're the primary beneficiary, but do you remember who the contingent beneficiary is? My mouth went dry. Brandon. If something happens to me, or if I'm declared incompetent, Brandon gets the money. That policy is worth $500,000. The room spun. This wasn't just about control or cruelty. This was about money. Nearly $750,000. Jessica had been systematically destroying my reputation, my relationships, my mental health, all to position herself to take everything. If they can get me declared mentally incompetent, I said slowly, or if I couldn't finish the sentence. They'd get everything, Thomas confirmed. The house sale is already in progress. If something happened to you, or if they could prove you were incompetent to manage your affairs, Brandon would get the life insurance as contingent beneficiary. I thought about that night with the pill bottle. How close I'd come. If I had, Jessica would have won completely. Taken my grandchildren, my assets, and my life. We need to document all of this, Thomas said. Show the financial motive. Show the pattern of false accusations. Show premeditation. We worked for 2 more weeks, compiling everything. Jason's statement about the false assault claim. Gerald's testimony about the fabricated harassment claim. Kelly's documentation of Jessica's research. The financial motive. The forged documents. Lawrence Patterson reviewed everything with the careful attention of a man who finally had ammunition. This is good, he said. Really good. We can file a motion to dissolve the restraining order and file a countersuit for fraud, defamation, and elder abuse. But Miranda, this is going to get ugly. Jessica's going to fight back hard. Let her, I said. I'm done being afraid. We filed the motion on a Wednesday. By Friday, Jessica had responded. She filed an emergency custody motion, claiming Brandon was an incompetent parent due to his mother's harmful influence. She was seeking sole custody of Emma and Lucas. She also filed for an emergency restraining order against Thomas, claiming he'd been stalking and harassing her. The evidence? Doctored photographs showing Thomas's car near her dental office. He'd actually been at a medical appointment 3 blocks away, but the timestamps had been altered to make it look like he was following her. She's trying to isolate you, Lawrence said. Remove your support system. But she's also getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. The court date was set for 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to prepare for the most important fight of my life. But Jessica wasn't done. She sent a message through my cousin Ruth. She wanted to talk again. To settle this without more lawyers. To find a peaceful solution. The meeting location she suggested? The park where Emma and Lucas went every Saturday morning. I could see them from a distance while we talked. Thomas begged me not to go. It's a trap, Miranda. Obviously a trap. But the chance to see my grandchildren, even from a distance, even for just a moment, was too powerful to resist. I went to the park the next Saturday morning. The worst decision of my life. The park was busy that morning, filled with families enjoying the mild November weather. Children played on the swings and slides. Parents chatted on benches. Everything looked normal, peaceful. I saw them immediately. Emma and Lucas on the jungle gym, bundled in light jackets. Emma had gotten taller. Lucas's hair had been cut short. 7 weeks since I'd last seen them, and they'd changed. Children changed so fast at their ages. Every missed day was a theft I'd never recover. Jessica sat on a bench nearby, watching them. When she saw me approach, she smiled. Not the cruel smirk from my birthday party. Something softer, more calculated. Miranda, thank you for coming. I sat on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining distance. You said you wanted to talk. I do. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. About how things got so out of control. Maybe there's a way to fix this. Without courts and lawyers and all this ugliness. I watched my grandchildren play, my heart aching. Lucas had spotted me and was staring. I gave him a tiny wave. His face lit up. What kind of way? I asked, not trusting this at all. Drop the lawsuit. Stop fighting the restraining order. Accept that you and I need boundaries. In return, I'll arrange supervised visits. Once a month, you can see Emma and Lucas. With me present, of course. Once a month. Supervised. With my abuser present. The humiliation of it made me want to scream. But what choice did I have? At least I'd see them. I need to think about it, I said. Emma had noticed me now, too. She jumped off the jungle gym and started running toward me. Grandma! For one perfect moment, I opened my arms to hug her. She was right there, 3 feet away, about to crash into me with the full force of an 8-year-old's enthusiasm. Then Jessica stood up. Emma, no! Get away from her! Emma stopped, confused. But it's Grandma. Get away from her right now. Lucas had climbed down too, and was walking over. Grandma, where have you been? We missed you. Jessica grabbed Emma's arm hard enough to make her yelp. I said, get back. Jessica, you're hurting her, I said, standing up. No, you stay away from my children. Jessica's voice rose to a shriek. Someone help. She's violating the restraining order. She's trying to take them. Other parents were looking now. Some pulled out phones. I'm not trying to take them. You invited me here. You said I could see them. That's a lie. I never said that. Jessica pulled out her phone. She was recording. Everyone see this? She's violating a court order. She's dangerous. Someone call the police. Emma was crying now, frightened by her mother's screaming. Lucas grabbed his sister's hand, his face pale. A man jogged over, his expression protective. Ma'am, is this woman bothering you? She has a restraining order. She's not supposed to be near my children. She threatened to kidnap them. That's not true, I said, but my voice shook. She invited me here. She said I could see them. She's lying. Everyone can see she's unstable. More people gathered. Some filmed on their phones. I saw the story taking shape in their minds. A crazy woman harassing a terrified mother. The villain was clear. I tried to back away. I'm leaving. I'm going. Too late, Jessica said. Sirens wailed in the distance. She'd called the police before I'd even arrived. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Officers approached, hands near their belts. One I recognized. Officer Hayes from the night Jessica had called the cops when I went to her house. Ma'am, we need you to step away from the family, he said to me. I didn't do anything wrong. She invited me here. Do you have any proof of that? Of course I didn't. It had been a verbal message through Ruth. No texts, no emails, no evidence. Jessica showed the officers her phone. The video she'd just recorded, starting from when I supposedly approached her children, edited to remove context, to make me look like an aggressor. She violated the restraining order, Officer Hayes said. His voice was kind but firm. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I have to arrest you. No, please. My grandchildren. Don't do this in front of them. But Emma and Lucas watched as their grandmother was handcuffed. Emma sobbed. Lucas's face was frozen in shock. The image of their expressions would haunt me for months. I spent that night in jail. The walls were concrete block, painted in institutional green. My cellmate was a woman named Tammy, arrested for possession. She mostly left me alone, for which I was grateful. I sat on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling, wondering how my life had reached this point. Thomas bailed me out the next morning. His face was gray with exhaustion and anger. We're in trouble, Miranda. Serious trouble. You violated a restraining order. It's on video. Multiple witnesses. She set me up. She told Ruth to invite me. Ruth denies it, says Jessica never told her to do any such thing. Of course she did. Jessica had planned every detail. Lawrence Patterson met us at his office. The news was worse than I'd imagined. The prosecutor is considering criminal charges. Violation of a restraining order can mean jail time. But more importantly, this incident destroys our credibility for the custody hearing. A judge will see a grandmother who can't follow court orders, who approached children despite being told not to. It makes you look unstable, exactly what Jessica's been claiming. I sank into the chair, defeated. So she wins. Not necessarily, but we need something big, something that proves her pattern of manipulation. And we need it fast. The hearing is in 10 days. That afternoon, Helen came to see me at my apartment. She looked nervous, kept glancing at the door. "Miranda, I did something I probably shouldn't have. After you were arrested, I was so angry. I went to Brandon's office. My heart stopped. Helen, no. If Jessica finds out you talked to him." "I know, but I had to try. I pretended to be a potential client, got him talking about properties, about his life, and Miranda," he broke down, just completely fell apart. "He said he doesn't recognize his life anymore. That Jessica controls everything. His phone, his finances, who he talks to. He said he misses you so much, it physically hurts, but it's too late to go back now." "Did you record it?" She pulled out her phone. Every word. I listened to my son's voice, broken and lost, admitting he was trapped, admitting he'd made a terrible mistake. The pain in his words made me cry, but it also gave me something else. Proof that Brandon was a victim too. "This shows Jessica's pattern of control," I said. "But using it will destroy Brandon professionally, personally. Everyone will know he's been under her thumb. His pride, his reputation, everything." "You have to use it," Thomas said when I showed him. "It's the only way." I held my son's confession in my hands, recorded without his knowledge, and faced an impossible choice. Save myself and my grandchildren by exposing Brandon's weakness, or protect my son and lose everything. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing Brandon's voice. I don't know how my life got like this. By morning, I'd made my decision. We're going to use the recording, but not in court. We're going to use it differently. We're going to give Brandon a chance to step away from Jessica before this all becomes public. We're going to offer him a way out. Thomas looked skeptical. And if he chooses Jessica anyway, then at least I tried to save my son before I destroyed him. We set up a meeting. Brandon agreed, reluctantly, to meet us at a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town, neutral territory. He looked terrible, like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Hollow-eyed, thinner, his shoulders hunched like he carried a physical weight. We showed him everything. Jason's statement about the false assault, Gerald's testimony about the fabricated harassment claim, Kelly's documentation of Jessica's premeditated planning, the financial motive, the forged documents. Brandon's face went through a transformation as he absorbed it all. Denial, anger, confusion, horror, recognition. "I knew something was wrong," he whispered. "I've known for months, but I kept telling myself I was paranoid, that Mom had gotten in my head, that Jessica loved me." "She doesn't love you," Thomas said gently. "She's using you, and she's using your children." Brandon looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since my birthday party. "Mom, what did she do to your eye?" "The truth. She punched me. Hard enough to knock me down. I didn't fight back. I didn't even try. And when you came in and said she'd put me in my place, something inside me died." Tears ran down his face. "I didn't see it. She said you'd attacked her first. She had a bruise on her arm, and I believed her." "A bruise she gave herself," Thomas said. "It's her pattern. She manufactures evidence." We showed him more. Text messages we'd uncovered where Jessica discussed her plan to get control of Miranda's money with someone, likely her mother. Evidence that she'd been emotionally manipulating him for years, isolating him from friends, controlling their finances. Classic abuse tactics. "The birthday party," I said. "Be honest with me, Brandon. Did you see what happened? Or did you just believe what Jessica told you?" He closed his eyes. "I was in the kitchen. I heard yelling. By the time I came in, you were on the floor, and Jessica was crying, saying you'd hit her. I believed her without question. God, Mom, I believed her without even asking your side." We talked for 2 hours. Brandon admitted Jessica had been pushing him to deal with me for weeks before my birthday, that she'd been increasingly aggressive, prone to rages, then tearful apologies, that he'd felt like he was walking on eggshells in his own home. "She threatened me once," he said quietly. Said if I ever left her, I'd never see Emma and Lucas again, that she'd tell everyone I abused her. I thought she was just upset, speaking in anger, but now I realize she meant it. She's doing to you what she did to me, I said, making you the villain so she can justify anything she does. Brandon looked at his hands. For a moment, I thought we'd reached him, that he'd finally break free. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? The kids need you home now. I watched my son's face shudder. The brief moment of clarity disappeared behind a wall of fear and conditioning. I have to go, he said, standing up. Brandon, please, don't go back there. I have to. Emma and Lucas need me. I can't just abandon them with her. Then help me get them away from her. Testify in court. Tell the truth. He looked at me with such anguish. If I do that, she'll destroy me. She'll say I abused her, that I abused the kids. She'll take everything. And everyone will believe her, because she's so good at lying. So you're just going to let her win? I don't know what else to do. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Mom, I'm sorry. For everything. I don't know how to fix this. And he left. I sat there, staring at the door he'd walked through, feeling like I'd lost him all over again. But that evening, everything changed. There was a knock on my apartment door at 9:30 at night. I opened it carefully, expecting Thomas or Helen. It was Brandon, alone, with a duffel bag. I left, he said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook. I told Jessica I needed space, that I was going to stay at a motel for a few days. She went crazy, started screaming, throwing things. She said she'd call the police and tell them I hit her. So I recorded it, all of it, her threats, her admitting she'd lied about you, everything. He showed me his phone. The recording was clear, damning. Jessica's voice, stripped of all pretense, showing her true nature. I should have done this months ago, Brandon said. Years ago. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm ready to help. I'm ready to tell the truth, whatever it takes. For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt like we might actually win. The next 72 hours were a frenzy of preparation. Brandon moved into a cheap motel near the highway, paying cash so Jessica couldn't track his credit card. Thomas and Lawrence Patterson worked around the clock to incorporate Brandon's testimony and evidence into our case. But Jessica realized quickly that something had changed. Brandon wasn't answering her calls, wasn't coming home, and that made her dangerous. On the second day, she filed an emergency motion claiming Brandon had kidnapped Emma and Lucas, except he hadn't. The children were at Jessica's mother's house, exactly where they were supposed to be. But Jessica was trying to paint Brandon as unstable, to get ahead of his defection. She also filed for emergency sole custody and immediate divorce, and she filed criminal charges against me for conspiracy to kidnap, claiming I'd manipulated Brandon into leaving. The court hearing, originally scheduled for 4 days away, was moved up to emergency status, 72 hours to prepare for the most important legal battle of my life. Lawrence Patterson laid out our strategy. We go in with everything. The pattern evidence, the financial motive, Brandon's testimony, the recording of Jessica's threats. We show the judge that Jessica has been systematically abusing both Miranda and Brandon, manipulating the legal system, and putting the children at risk. What if the judge doesn't believe us? I asked. Then we appeal. But Miranda, we have real evidence now, documented proof. This isn't he said, she said anymore. The courthouse on that gray December morning looked like something from a nightmare. News had spread through our small town. People I'd known for decades showed up to watch, drawn by gossip and drama. Some were supportive. Most were just curious to see the spectacle. Jessica arrived with Marcus Webb, her expensive lawyer. She'd dressed carefully. Conservative suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back. She looked like a professional, put-together working mother, not a manipulative abuser. Brandon arrived separately, with Thomas. He looked terrified, but determined. This was the first time he'd publicly gone against Jessica. There would be no going back. Emma and Lucas were there too, accompanied by a court-appointed guardian ad litem named Patricia Morrison. The children looked confused and scared. Emma kept looking between her parents, trying to understand. Lucas held a stuffed bear and wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. Judge Foster presided again. She'd granted the original restraining order against me, but she'd also seen enough domestic cases to recognize patterns when they emerged. "This is a complex case," she said, reviewing the files. "Multiple allegations on both sides. Emergency motions. We're here today to determine custody arrangements and to address allegations of abuse, both physical and emotional. Let's proceed." Marcus Webb went first, presenting Jessica's case. He painted a picture of a devoted mother trying to protect her children from a toxic, manipulative grandmother and a husband having a mental breakdown. He showed the video from the park, me approaching the children despite the restraining order. It looked damning, even knowing it had been a setup. He presented character witnesses. Jessica's mother, Linda, who testified that Miranda had always been controlling and difficult. A neighbor who claimed to have overheard me threatening Jessica. Jessica's supervisor at the dental office, who said Jessica was a model employee, always professional, never missed work. Then Jessica testified. And once again, she was masterful. Tears at the right moments. A trembling voice describing how terrified she'd been. How she'd only been trying to protect her children from my increasingly erratic behavior. "Brandon has been under his mother's influence his entire life," she said. "Even now, she's manipulated him into turning against me. She's destroyed our family because she couldn't stand that I took her son away from her." She described Brandon's recent behavior. The motel, the recording, the secrecy, made it sound like a man having a breakdown, influenced by his controlling mother. It was convincing. Looking at the judge's face, I could see doubt there. Then it was our turn. Lawrence Patterson started methodically. He presented Jason Burke's sworn statement about Jessica's false assault accusations, Gerald Chen's testimony about the fabricated workplace harassment, Kelly Martinez's documentation of Jessica's premeditated research months before the birthday incident. The judge's expression began to change, from skepticism to interest. Then we presented the financial evidence, the property records, the life insurance policy, the paper trail, showing Jessica had researched exactly how to gain control of my assets. "This wasn't about family dysfunction," Lawrence said. "This was about money." Mrs. Jessica had a clear financial motive to eliminate Miranda from the family and to gain control over Brandon. Finally, Brandon took the stand. I'd been nervous about this moment. Brandon was not a confident public speaker. He got anxious, stumbled over words. And he was about to admit to the world that he'd been emotionally abused by his wife, manipulated and controlled. But when he started talking, something shifted. Maybe it was the release of finally telling the truth. Maybe it was the weight lifting off his shoulders. Whatever it was, his testimony was powerful. He described years of subtle manipulation. Jessica isolating him from friends, convincing him they were bad influences. Jessica taking control of their finances, claiming she was better with money. Jessica monitoring his phone, his email, his location at all times. "I thought it was love," he said. "I thought she just cared about me, wanted to be involved in my life, but it was control." And when Mom started questioning things, Jessica saw her as a threat. He described the weeks before my birthday party. Jessica's increasing pressure to put your mother in her place, her complaints about my interference, her insistence that I was trying to destroy their marriage. The night of Mom's birthday, I was in the kitchen. I heard yelling, a crash. I ran in and Mom was on the floor, her eye already swelling. Jessica was crying, saying Mom had slapped her first, that she'd only defended herself. I saw a bruise on Jessica's arm, and I believed her immediately. I didn't even ask Mom's side of the story. I just believed Jessica. His voice broke. And then I stood there in front of everyone and said my wife had put my mother in her place. I defended her assault. What kind of son does that? The kind who's been manipulated, Lawrence said gently. Mr. Brandon, tell the court about the night you left. Brandon described it in detail. His attempt to ask for space. Jessica's explosive rage, her threats to claim he'd hit her, and then the recording. Lawrence played it for the courtroom. Jessica's voice, clear and damning, admitting she'd lied about me, threatening Brandon, revealing her true nature when the mask finally slipped. You were nothing before me. I made you. Your mother should have just stayed out of it. Everything would have been fine. I was just speeding up the process anyway. The courtroom was silent when the recording ended. Even Marcus Webb looked shaken. Jessica stood up, her chair scraping loudly. That's out of context. He edited it. Mrs. Jessica, sit down, Judge Foster said sternly. No, he's lying. They're all lying. Brandon was nothing when I met him. I built him up. I gave him confidence. I made him successful. And this is how he repays me? By turning against me with his manipulative mother? Mrs. Jessica, I will hold you in contempt if you don't sit down immediately. But Jessica was beyond control now. The mask had completely crumbled. You think you can just take my children? Everything I've worked for? I planned this perfectly. I did everything right. Marcus Webb grabbed her arm, trying to quiet her, but she shook him off. Miranda was going to die eventually anyway. She's old. The money would have gone to Brandon, which means it would have gone to me. I was just making it happen faster. And now you're all going to ruin everything because of some recording? The courtroom erupted. Judge Foster banged her gavel. Order! I will clear this courtroom. Security approached Jessica. She was still yelling, still raging, as they escorted her out, her words echoing through the halls, admitting to everything, confirming every accusation we'd made. When order was finally restored, Judge Foster took a long moment before speaking. I'm going to take a brief recess to review all the evidence presented today. We'll reconvene in 1 hour. That hour was the longest of my life. Brandon and I sat together in the hallway, not talking. Thomas paced. Helen arrived, having gotten word of what was happening, and held my hand. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Foster's expression was grave. This is one of the most disturbing cases I've seen in 20 years on the bench. Mrs. Jessica, you have systematically manipulated the legal system, falsified evidence, committed fraud, and emotionally abused both your husband and mother-in-law. Your own testimony just now has confirmed the allegations against you. She turned to me. Mrs. Miranda, the restraining order against you is dissolved immediately. All charges are dropped. I'm ordering an investigation into Mrs. Jessica's forged documents, which will likely result in criminal fraud charges. Then to Brandon. Mr. Brandon, I'm granting you temporary sole custody of Emma and Lucas, effective immediately. Mrs. Jessica will have supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation and completion of anger management and parenting courses. Finally, back to Jessica, who sat stone-faced beside her lawyer. Mrs. Jessica, you are ordered to return all property stolen from Mrs. Miranda within 48 hours. This includes jewelry, photographs, and legal documents. You will also be responsible for Mrs. Miranda's legal fees and damages. The gavel came down. It was over. Emma and Lucas were brought forward. Emma ran to Brandon, then looked at me hesitantly. Grandma? I knelt down, my knees protesting but my heart soaring. Hi, sweetheart. Are you okay now? Is the bad stuff over? I looked at my son, who nodded. At Thomas, who smiled. At the judge, who'd seen through Jessica's lies. Yes, baby, the bad stuff is over. The weeks following the hearing passed in a blur of necessary chaos. Jessica faced criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and a permanent mark on her record. Jessica's mother, Linda, showed up at my door one afternoon, her face puffy from crying. Miranda, I'm so sorry. I believed her. She's my daughter, and I believed everything she said about you. I should have questioned it. I should have looked closer. I forgave her, because holding on to anger would only poison me further. Linda had been manipulated too, just like Brandon, just like me. The house sale was stopped. Brandon signed paperwork transferring his cosigner rights back to me without contest. He insisted on paying 3 months of my rent as part of his apology, though I told him it wasn't necessary. "It is necessary," he said. "I put you out of your home. I defended your abuser. I owe you so much more than 3 months' rent." Moving back into my house felt surreal. The rooms looked the same but felt different. Lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. Brandon returned most of my stolen property, the photo albums, the legal documents, my mother's wedding ring, which I immediately promised to Emma for when she was older. Some things were missing, sold or lost, but what remained was enough. Brandon and I started family therapy together. Dr. Rachel Morrison had been recommended by the court. She specialized in family reunification after abuse. The sessions were hard. Brandon had to confront how completely he'd been manipulated. I had to confront my own role in not seeing the warning signs earlier. "Abusers are good at what they do," Dr. Morrison explained. "They don't announce themselves. They slowly, systematically break down their victims' defenses. Neither of you failed. You were both targeted by someone skilled in manipulation." It helped. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild our relationship. Emma and Lucas spent every weekend with me now. We had so much time to make up for. Emma told me about school, about her friends, about the anxiety she'd developed during the months of family chaos. Lucas, quieter, showed me through actions rather than words. He'd sit close to me on the couch, holding my hand, making sure I was real. "I thought you didn't love us anymore," Emma admitted one Saturday morning as we made pancakes together. "Mom said you were dangerous, that you didn't want to see us." "I wanted to see you every single day," I told her. "I fought as hard as I could to get back to you." "Did Mom really hurt you? At your birthday party?" I measured my words carefully. Dr. Morrison had advised honesty appropriate to their ages. Yes, she did. But she was very sick in her mind. She wasn't thinking clearly. That's why she's getting help now. "Will we have to live with her again?" "Not unless you want to, and not until she's better. You and Lucas will stay with your dad, and you'll come visit me as much as you want." She hugged me tight. "I want to visit you every day." Brandon filed for divorce. It was finalized within 6 months. Jessica didn't contest it. Her lawyer advised her that fighting would only make her criminal case worse. She maintained supervised visitation with Emma and Lucas once a month, but both children were reluctant. Emma asked not to go several times. Lucas had started having nightmares again before visits. The court-appointed therapist recommended reducing contact until Jessica completed her mandated counseling. Eventually, it was reduced to phone calls. Then even those stopped when Jessica moved to Colorado with a new boyfriend, starting over somewhere no one knew her story. My reputation in town slowly recovered. Helen helped spread the truth about what had happened. My pastor called to apologize for asking me to stop volunteering. I declined to return, not out of anger, but because I'd found a new purpose. I started volunteering at the county's elder abuse prevention program. I told my story at community centers, at senior centers, anywhere they'd let me speak. I talked about recognizing manipulation, about fighting back even when it seemed hopeless, about how the legal system could be weaponized but also corrected. Other families reached out, grandparents who'd been cut off from grandchildren, adult children who realized too late they'd been manipulated against their parents. I helped where I could, sharing resources, offering support, sometimes just listening. 1 year after that terrible birthday party, we had another celebration. Emma turned 9, Lucas 7. We gathered in my backyard, the house that had almost been sold now filled with laughter again. Brandon gave a toast, his voice steady now, stronger than it had been in years. To my mom, the strongest woman I know. You taught me that love sometimes means fighting, even when it costs everything. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I'd given up on myself. Thomas added his own toast. To my sister, who showed us all what real courage looks like. Emma climbed onto my lap, nearly too big for it now, but still my baby. Grandma, I made you a card. She handed me a piece of construction paper covered in glitter and stickers. The words inside, written in careful third-grade handwriting. I love you most in the whole world. Thank you for saving us. I looked around at my family, healed but not unmarked by what we'd survived. We bore scars, all of us. Brandon still flinched when his phone buzzed unexpectedly. Emma had anxiety about separation. Lucas was quieter than he'd been before. And me, I startled at unexpected knocks, still half-expected Jessica to reappear. But we were together. We were healing. And we were stronger for having fought our way back to each other. The sun set over my backyard, casting golden light across the faces of the people I loved most. Brandon caught my eye and smiled. A real smile, the first genuine one I'd seen from him in years. I thought about that night I'd held the pill bottle, contemplating ending it all. I thought about every moment I'd wanted to give up, to surrender, to let Jessica win. And I was so grateful I hadn't, because this, right here, this was worth every battle I'd fought, every humiliation I'd endured, every dollar I'd spent on lawyers, every sleepless night, and every tear. I got my son back. I got my grandchildren back. I got myself back. And in the process, I learned something crucial. Abuse thrives in silence. It grows in the dark corners where victims are too ashamed or too frightened to speak up. Fighting back, speaking the truth, refusing to be silenced even when it costs you everything, that's the only way to stop it. Sometimes the people you save by fighting back are the ones you love most, even when they can't see they need saving, even when they fight against you, even when they defend their abuser. You keep fighting anyway. Because love isn't just soft words and gentle touches. Sometimes love is steel. Sometimes love is standing up and saying no more, even when your voice shakes. Sometimes love is dragging someone out of the darkness, even when they're kicking and screaming. That's what I learned at 65 years old, standing in my living room with a black eye, while my son defended his wife for assaulting me. I learned that I was stronger than I ever knew, and I learned that it's never too late to fight back. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love, even when they couldn't see they needed help? Have you watched someone you care about fall under the influence of a manipulative person? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If this story touched you, if it resonated with your own experiences, or helped you understand something you've witnessed, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people overcoming real hardships. And share this with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who might be going through something similar and needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for letting me share this painful but ultimately hopeful journey with you. May you never face what I faced, but if you do, may you have the strength to fight back. May you have people who believe you, and may you never forget that you're stronger than you think. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love. And remember, speaking up is always worth it, even when it costs everything, especially then.